My name is Seth Miranda, and I'll be talking about rewards and motivation today. So let's just jump into it. What is motivation? It's the act or process of giving someone a reason for doing something. The act or process of motivating someone. The condition of being eager to act or work. The condition of being motivated. Simply said, a force or influence that causes someone to do something. All these are the definitions of motivation. So how are we motivated? We all set goals. We focus on our dreams. We stay positive, generate new ideas. All that is a type of motivation. And a lot of those are results from motivation. Let's talk about work. When we go to work, how are we motivated? Are we motivated simply just to make money? Or are we motivated because we enjoy the task that we're performing? School, especially us teachers, when we go to school, how are we motivated? Is it simply a job? Or is it to influence those students in our classrooms to make their lives better? Family. We all have motivations in family, where we want to go, where we want to live, what kind of life do we want to live. Personal achievement, and we have personal interest. All those things determine what your motivations are. We all have motivations in those things. So let's talk about two types of motivation. We have extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is behavior is driven by external rewards such as money, fame, grades, and praise. Basically, it's everything outside yourself. Everything that can have an influence on you. That's our motivations externally. And a lot of these in classroom, we're talking about rewards. Gold stars, best student awards, honor rolls, pizzas for reading, and other reward-focused incentive systems have long been a part of the currency of schools. When applied to education, students who are extrinsically motivated behave in a way to avoid punishment or obtain certain rewards. Now let's look on the flip side. Intrinsic motivation. This is when they engage in a behavior because it's personally rewarding, not for an external reward. So everything that we do, if it's intrinsic motivation, it comes from the inside. Our personal interest. We want to learn something because it interests us, not because it's what we're told to do. People who are intrinsically motivated do things because of the enjoyment of the activity themselves. For example, a student with intrinsic motivation will engage in class discussions not because of participation points, but because they enjoy debating or they enjoy the topic themselves. An athlete playing a sport for the love of the game instead of the attention and the praise from others. All that is intrinsic motivation. So let's look at the common misconceptions about motivation. From the college website, taken from an excerpt on chapter 11 from Psychology Applied to Teaching, it states that there are two main misconceptions about motivation that teachers sometimes fall into when faced with a lack of motivation in their students. We've all been there. The student is unmotivated. This is a common misconception because as long as a student chooses goals and expends a certain amount of effort to achieve them, he or she, by definition, is motivated. Are they motivated not to learn? It can happen. The real problem is that the student is not motivated to behave the way teachers want them to behave. The second misconception is one person can be directly motivated by another. And this is false because motivation can only come from within. However, one can be influenced to arrive at the motivation needed within themselves to achieve said goals by outside forces, which is external motivation. Factors that influence student motivation. We have home life. It all starts at home. Before the child even comes to school, a child's home life is initially responsible for the development of attitudes towards learning. This all comes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. When children are raised in a home that nurtures a sense of self-worth, competence, autonomy, and self-efficacy, which is believing in oneself, they will be more apt to accept the risk inherent in learning. On the other hand, if children are raised to think and behave the opposite, their freedom to engage in academically challenging pursuits and capacity tolerate and cope with failure are greatly diminished. So factors that can influence student motivation. We have teachers. We have expectations. That is the main way we can motivate our students, is by telling them what our expectations are. The beliefs teachers themselves have about teaching and learning and the nature of expectations they hold for students also exert a powerful influence. And this came from our book that we're all reading. Student success is only limited by adult expectations. Give your students more than what they expect, and you will get more back than you've ever expected. Another way us teachers can motivate our students is rewards. Clearly in the classroom, all tasks can be made important through the use of external rewards and certain evaluation procedures. However, some studies have suggested that using rewards and extrinsic motivation can undermine the values of intrinsic motivation in our students. That brings us to an extrinsic motivation versus intrinsic in schools. When it comes to student learning, students will engage in very different thought processes and behaviors. If they are motivated by outside forces such as rewards, as opposed to the student who is motivated by self-improvement or interest. Studies have suggested that rather than being positive motivators, rewards can at times undermine rather than enhance self-motivation, curiosity, persistence at learning tasks. In specific cases, rewards can give a short boost in interest and motivation, yet they lose their effectiveness over time. So, when rewards are used in class, teachers should emphasize the intrinsic values that is accompanied by the task being completed, because intrinsic values is our main goal to these students. We want them to want to learn, and that's where we want to get the student. So intrinsic motivation has been associated with improved results, increased interest in learning, a greater ratio of successfully accomplished goals, as well as more autonomy. Extrinsic motivation is not always a bad thing. It can give the students a nudge in the right direction to develop an interest in the material. It's all about balancing the motivational techniques by using extrinsic motivation to help nourish self-motivation in our students. And here we have a video, and hopefully it will load.